What is up, dudes? Lady dudes, welcome back to another deck profile on Just Nuts here. And today we got a pretty hyper deck profile. I know a lot of people love this deck. I like this deck a lot. I have a friend who really liked this deck. He played this deck like a while, like when we were playing really bad decks in high school. So like 5, 6, 7 years ago, he was playing this deck in a much worse version, obviously. But here I'm trying to build like a more competitive version, and I was definitely getting this inspiration from the, I believe, French National Top 64 list. That's a really weird list in my opinion. It's like a 50 card build with like evenly matching the main. I don't necessarily agree with that. It may be the better overall, but that's not how I wanted to run the deck. This is just my personal spin on it. I've done a lot of test hands with it. It's worked out pretty well for me. And yeah, let's just jump right into it because we got a lot of new cards. They're actually not as expensive as they once were when they first came out, and you don't actually need that many of the new cards anyway, so it's pretty decent. But we'll start with the monsters. So we'll start with the Harpie lineup. Start with 3 Harpie Channeler. This is like the most important monster in the deck. She just tutors out any Harpie you want. It's almost always Perfumer, but there are other situations. But she says you can discard any Harpie card from your hand to special summon any Harpie monster straight from the deck in defense position. Now, people used to play like Harpie's Dragon just because she also becomes level 7 if you control a dragon. So you could use her effect to summon Harpie's Dragon. You'd have two level 7s. But because Galaxy Tomahawk is now banned, that was really the only legitimate play you would even warrant playing Harpie's Pet Dragon because it's such a brick otherwise. So I don't play it anymore, but she's still super important. One of the best starter cards to just get stuff out on the field as fast as possible. Really like her. Next up, the second most important monster is Harpie Perfumer. She is a searcher in the deck. When she is normal or special summoned, she can add any spell or trap card with Harpie Lady Sisters, specifically in the card text. So I believe we only play 3 targets for that, so it's either going to be your field spell, Harpie's Hunting Ground, it's going to be Elegant Egotist, or it's going to be the one copy of Alluring Mirror split we play. But all 3 are pretty integral to the strategy we're playing, so she's still really important. And just literally grabbing a Elegant Egotist to just like special summon a Harpie Lady 1 straight from deck is just a free +1. Like she hits the field and she almost immediately gets you another monster on board, which is pretty good. There, so those are the 2 most important ones. As far as like a pseudo important 3 of monster is Harpie Harpist. She's not great. You want to open her up with Channeler because she has 2 effects. Her first effect is not that relevant, but when she's normal summoned, you can target another. Is it Wing Beast specifically? Does it have to be a Wing Beast? You can target 1 Wing Beast monster you control and 1 monster your opponent controls and bounce them both to the hand. She cannot bounce herself with this effect, which is kind of lame. Sometimes that does come up where you're like, dang, if she could just bounce herself, I could literally just normal her, bounce her back, and then keep playing from there. But because she has to bounce something else, it can make for awkward situations. That effect doesn't come up that much, though. The second effect is the most important one. The turn she's sent to the graveyard, it can be any way, shape, or form. She can be full burial. She'll add any winged beast that's level 4 from your deck to your hand on the end phase. So she's really important. Well, I wouldn't say really important, but she's pretty important. She's one of the like pseudo starters, and she's 1700, which actually comes up. She's bigger than all the other main ones because these ones are 14, so they're pretty small. But yeah, I think she's a 3 of for sure. And then one that definitely is questionable, but I play 3 Harpie Lady 1. So Harpie Lady 1 herself doesn't really do anything. She's just the only monster in our deck that we actually can special summon off of Elegant Egotist. So that's why we play her at 3 because we're maxing out on Egotist as well. And we're just trying to get her out. And also the fact that on field she gives all wind monsters a 300 buff, including herself, means if you put like 2 of these on the field, you're going to put yourself in a position to apply a lot of offensive pressure in the battle phase or buff up your stuff defensively to keep your opponent from, you know, really going in on you in the battle phase all the way. So she's like a necessary evil, and opening her, it actually hasn't been that bad, I will say. In doing a lot of test hands, there's not really a ton of times where I even open her and I'm just like, oh, she ruins the hand. Is she the best in the hand? Absolutely not. But does she completely ruin hands? Absolutely not. Because there are some pretty busted cards that let you really have a really good chance in a lot of duels just because you drew 1 card. We do play 1 copy of Harpie Queen. You don't really want to see the field spell that much, plus like Perfumer searches it, which is like one of your main combo pieces. But the reason I play this is if you really need the field spell for a certain situation, maybe you're playing a deck that does have a high amount of back row, you can search her on the end phase with Harpis effect, and then next turn you'll be able to get the field spell out, you'll be able to pop some spells and traps, and keep going from there. Also, she's 1900, which can totally come up because you end up with like 1 or 2 Harpie Lady 1s on the field, and the field spell buffs them all 200. She could easily end up being, you know, like 2700 just by herself. So she is the biggest one in the main deck at least. So that can definitely come up as well. One spicy tech we do play is one Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. This card's pretty spicy. It just says neither player can special summon anything unless it's a wind monster. So your opponent, one, has to clear this off the field before they can even try to summon anything, special summon anything at least. So a lot of people would have to like literally waste their battle phase just attacking over this thing with their normal summon, and then do everything in their main phase too. So essentially locking themselves out of doing any legitimate damage to the rest of your board. But what I like about this is that with the Harpie Lady 1s, they buff all wind monsters. So that includes this. Also, this is a winged beast, so the field spell buffs at 200. So if you have like 2 Harpie Lady 1s and a hunting ground on the field, this thing will be 1800. There's not that many decks, like decks don't play a ton of normal summons that can even definitely not get over that. There's not a ton of 1900 monsters in the game right now, but 1800, so they have to like even crash, like use your normal summon to crash and then try and do stuff in the main phase too. Even if they do out that situation, it's so minus for them. So, and if they don't out it, you just win on the next turn straight up. You'll just OTK. So he's really spicy, and you'll see how we can get him. He's also technically searchable off of Harpist for very specific situations, but he is, so I thought I'd throw that in there because she searches any level 4 winged beast. For hand traps, all I really play is Effect Veiler and Ash Blossom at 3 each. You know, note that we're poor, so we play the commons, but it is what it is, especially for a rogue deck like this. One thing I will say is that Effect Veiler has been lackluster, but it's still like a good hand trap. My only thing is that like it's pretty redundant with your Harpie's Featherstorm, which is like the most busted hand trap that's in the game, literally. This and like Subterra Fiendus are like probably the 2 most busted hand traps I've ever seen. It just is a little redundant, but worst case scenario, you negate everything with Harpie Featherstorm on one turn, and then next turn, Effect Veiler just is like something as a follow-up to keep your opponent from still being able to pop off. So it hasn't been bad. I'm not saying it's been bad. It just seems a little redundant sometimes if you open up both. And then one gets stuck in hand until next turn, which is probably a little suboptimal. But move to the spells here. We have Harpie's Hunting Ground. This is your field spell. It gives all winged beast monsters 200 attack and defense, which is actually pretty important. And then when any Harpie Lady or Harpie Lady sisters are normal or special summoned, the player who did the summon, completed the summon, can target and destroy target for cost and destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. This can be yours, this can be your opponent's. Keep in mind, this is a forced effect, which means it can miss timing, I believe, in certain situations with chain links, but also I think the more important thing is that if your opponent has no spells and traps, it forces this effect, so you're going to be forced to destroy something of your own. It's not the biggest deal. Worst case scenario, you just pop your own Harpie's Hunting Ground, which, you know, is not that minus, but it's so amazing in certain matchups. Really good against Striker. This card is the reason that you actually have a decent Striker matchup. And yeah, but only 2 copies. You never really need the third. Realistically, Perfumer searches it. You have Harpie Queen that can get it. You can hard draw it. You have a lot of ways that can get to it. You almost end up with it like most duels. Like probably I'd say like 70% of your duels you end up with it turn 1. All right, next up we have Hysteric Sign. This card is like, if not the most insane card in the deck, the second most insane card behind Featherstorm. This card says you can activate it. It's a continuous spell, so it stays up. Activate it, and you can add an Elegant Egotist from deck to hand. But also when it is destroyed by when it's sent from field or hand to graveyard. So you can discard this for cost. It isn't a Harpie card, so you can't discard it with Chandler, which is kind of a bummer, but, you know, there are other ways to discard it. We have Twin Twisters on the side. We have a spicy card later, we'll see. But you can discard it just to get it to resolve. But on the end phase, you will get to add 3 Harpie cards with different names from your deck to your hand. It's almost always a Featherstorm. It's almost always a Channeler. It's almost always a Harpie Harpist. That's like the best like kind of 3-card combo. You just want Featherstorm because it's so good. It literally can just stop meta decks, like most, not even meta decks, but most decks for a turn, straight up. Just say you don't do anything next turn, and then I'm going to try and kill you the turn after. But this card's so insane. Also, do note that both effects cannot be activated in the same turn. So if you do use that first effect to get Elegant Egotist, if it is sent to graveyard that turn, you will not be able to search on end phase. So you need to choose one. There are certain situations where you can't even get it engraved. So sometimes I just play it face up because I'm just like, I can't even get it engraved this turn. So I'm just going to play it face up. My opponent tries to, you know, blindly destroy it like a fool. I'm going to +3, and I can try and destroy it in one of my later turns. So Hysteric Sign, really good, really busted. Any card that just says like search 3 is probably a little bit too powerful, but that's why there are a lot of mediocre cards in the deck to kind of mitigate the fact that we have a card like that. 3 Elegant Egotist. This just says if you control a Harpie Lady monster on the field, you can special summon a Harpie Lady specifically, straight from the deck. So what's the interesting ruling about this card is that all the weird Harpie monsters, so not Harpie Lady, but Harpie Channeler, Harpie Perfumer, Harpie Harpist, Harpie Queen, all of them, they are only Harpie Lady on the field or in the graveyard. But Harpie Lady 1 says she's always treated as Harpie Lady. So she is treated as Harpie Lady in the deck, which means she can be summoned right off of Elegant Egotist, but the other ones cannot. But it's still just like a straight special summon from deck, really helping you turbo your strategy. And also it's like, it's just a free +1 off of Perfumer. I thought about just playing like 1 and 1 with one of this and one Harpie Lady 1, but if you draw Harpie Lady 1, like this card's dead, so like meh. And I just think 3 overall really helps in the grindier matches because you do end up just like getting one every turn sometimes and just getting another Harpie Lady 1 every turn. And I do a lot of turns where I end up pulling out 2 Harpie Lady 1s in the same turn as well, just giving a big buff to everything and putting more monsters on the field. So I think 3 and 3 is the best way. I know Harpie Lady 1's a little bit of a brick, but it's a necessary evil, I think, to play this deck at its maximum potential at the moment. I play 1 copy of Alluring Mirror Split next. This card's one of the newer cards. It's kind of when like you have the field spell, you already have like Elegant Egotist, and another Elegant Egotist isn't really that worth to search off Perfumer. You grab this card because it does have Harpie Lady Sisters in the name, so you can grab it off of Perfumer. It just says it's a continuous spell while it's up on the field. If a Harpie Lady is destroyed by battle, you can special summon any Harpie monster straight from the deck with a different name. And then also, if this card is destroyed while in your spell and trap zone by your effect or your opponent's effect, so you can't pop it with your own field spell, you can just special summon any Harpie monster back from your graveyard. So even if your opponent wants to out this, if it's a problem for them in the battle phase, you're still going to get a monster back from the graveyard. I really like this card, actually. Kind of reminds me of, Acid Rain, or whatever that card's called, from the Ninja deck. From, what is it called? It's like Rain... Acid Rain Sprinkling, can't even remember right now, but it's like a battle phase card, but you only play 1 of it because it's super searchable, and sometimes it comes in clutch. So just 1 copy of that. Easy side out if it's not good in the matchup. Then I played 3 Ties of the Brethren. This is kind of a spicy card. This is the whole reason, like if I didn't play this, I wouldn't be playing the Barrier Statue, but because they're all level 4 Wing Beasts, any Harpie on the field can get you Barrier Statue out just with this, and also you can pull him out with like a Harpie Lady 1, and you probably already put a Harpie Lady 1 on the field, so you can put 2 on the field, giving him a 600 boost if you have the field spell, an 800 boost, putting him at 1800, and then it can be a huge problem depending on the deck you're playing against. But this card's pretty good, and also baits negates, lets you play through certain hand traps. Like if you normal Perfumer or normal Channeler use their effects and they get hand trapped, and you have this as a follow-up, this is a pretty strong follow-up that just says, fuck you and your hand trap. You stop the weak effect, I get to also, but then I get to special summon too. So right in their face, you can punish them for that, which I really like about this card. This and Elegant Egotist just let you play through hand traps like really well, which I really like. Then for consistency, I know it might be blasphemy, but I decided to play 3 Pot of Desires in the deck. I know it's a 40-card deck. It's kind of frowned upon to play 3 Desires, but sometimes you really need those 2 cards, and this card saves the day. In a deck like this where you need to kind of open 2 or 3 card combos because 1 card never really does it all by itself, you kind of need a card like this to just get that extra +1. Like that. Sometimes you desires into desires, but you accept that. when you play it. So I'm ballsy. I don't care. I don't care. Next up is 2 super polys. These are the last 2 spells I play. When you play against meta decks, you kind of need a card that can like help you just kind of punish them for doing this. If you're playing like a more casual version but still wants to be like a better version of Harpies, I would definitely drop this. Like if you're not really expecting to play a bunch of meta stuff, because this is really only good against meta realistically, or consistently, I would say. And so I would definitely sub something in for this, maybe more hand traps, maybe some going second cards, maybe some like strong trap solemns for going first, whatever you want, whatever your personal preference is. But this card is just too strong, and it gives you such a strong advantage, especially going second, you know, against all like pretty much the meta decks except for strikers. And the last card I play is 3 Harpies Feather Storm. This is an insane hand trap that says the turn it's activated, your opponent... Oh, well, all right. So, wait. Before I get there, you have to control a wind-winged beast for you to be able to activate this. And if you control a Harpie monster, you can activate this from the hand. So, it's just a hand trap. So, you don't even have to risk, like, Denko Sekka or, you know, back row removal, like, right out the gate to even, like, make this, like, problematic for this. But it just says when it's active, the turn it's activated, any activated monster effects your opponent activates this turn are just negated, blanket negated if it's an activated effect. So against obviously Thunder Dragon, they just straight up pass to this, straight up. Sally's pretty much like don't do anything that turn. Orcus don't really do anything that turn. Strikers can do some things, but it still does limit what they can do because they can't Kagari, they can't Shizuku, they can't Hayate. They can't do any of those effects in that first turn, and that can slow them down enough so that you can apply enough offensive pressure turn 2 to really, you know, put them on their back heel. And yeah, it's just really good, really, really good. It can just win you duels by itself, literally. Sometimes you literally like go first, get that, and then on your opponent's first turn or turn 2, you drop that, they just pass with a super mediocre board, and you just kill them. It happens all the time. That's one of the most like common things going first. Then we go to the extra deck. So for the links, not a ton of links. You don't really need a huge link package. It's not the most important thing, but sometimes it can be. Great Fly is the one you go into the most just because it takes any 2 wins. It buffs all wins 500. So sometimes with Barrier Statue, you make a play with this so that it gets a 500 buff. Plus maybe a Harpie Lady 1, giving it that 800, maybe the Field Spell, putting it at 2,000. It can definitely rack up. And also if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to add any win monster from your graveyard back to your hand. Pretty handy. And then Unicorn for like if you make Great Fly and then just link up into Unicorn from there just to span a specific card. And then Borlo Dragon. You can span the field a decent amount, and if you do need, I believe this is the only card in the deck that is non-destruction, non-targeting removal. So I just plan for that, for like a very niche situation that could ever come up in. They play a pretty big Xyz package, so we start with the more niche ones being Lightning Chidori, Ice Beast Xerofin, Castel, the Sky Blasting Musketeer, and Tornado Dragon. These are, first off, these 2 can really only be made in this deck. I mean, not only this deck, but mostly this deck, because this one takes 2 level 4 wind monsters. Wind is not a very used attribute, so this deck is one of the very few that can take advantage of it. On summon, on XD summon, it targets 1 set card and puts it on the bottom of your opponent's deck, right? Yeah. And then you can attach 1 material once per turn to target a face-up card and put that on top of your opponent's deck. So it's targeting, but it's non-destruction, and you just remove 2 cards. Also, because it only uses 1 material to do that second effect, if it lives until next turn, you can just spin another card back to deck. Really strong. Also, it's wind, so it does get buffs from like a couple of the other cards in your deck. Pretty nice. Ice Beast Xerofin can only be made with 2 Winged Beast monsters, 2 level 4 Winged Beasts, which is pretty nice. You can attach 1 material for it. It will negate all face-up cards on your opponent's side of the field, and then it gains 300 attack for all face-up cards on the field, period, including your side of the field, times 300 on the time that it's activated. So you literally can just like negate like your opponent, all the monsters on your opponent's side of the field, and then just gain like you could gain like 2100 attack points and then just go in. Also, that boost and the negating ends on your opponent's, on the end of your opponent's next turn, and then you could just do it again on your next turn because it only takes 1 material to use. So this card's actually pretty nice, and it comes up in pretty specific situations, but when it does come up, it comes up huge. Turns off floodgates, turns off whatever, all monsters, everything. Castell, everybody knows Castell is one of those classic rank 4s that just removes any face-up card, I'm sorry, I think, because it just spins it to the deck by removing 2 materials. What's important about him is he's a wind wing beast, so he does get the buff from your field spell. He does get the buff from all the wind support, and also you can link into him under Rivalry, or I'm sorry, you can Xyz into him under Rivalry, under some other floodgates as well, which is pretty nice, and also Barrier Statue, making all the wind ones summonable at all times, so that's pretty cool. And then Tornado Dragon, the only thing that's relevant here is just spell and trap removal, and it's a wind, so you can summon it under Gozen, under your own Barrier Statue, and still, like, you know, maneuver around problematic cards, which is pretty cool. For the last couple rank 4s, I do play Baguska just for stun stuff. Sometimes you can put 2 monsters on the board, but not any disruption after that on weird, awkward hands. So sometimes you can't. You do just need to make like either Baguska or Abyss Dweller for those graveyard-centric decks we see in our metagame now. And then I also play a Utopia package because I think if you play a deck that's all rank 4s, you should probably have these in there somewhere because especially if you have the extra deck space, at some point they're just going to steal you a couple games. Like, they just are, because they're that nice sometimes, and nobody is ready for it because nobody like expects them to still be lurking around. And then for Super Poly, I just play these 3. Those are really the only ones you really need. This is good against Pendulums and Thunder Dragons and Orcus, so that covers 3 of like the top 5 matchups you'll see right now in our game. This is obviously for Salamangreats. Strikers, you can't really Super Poly anything, but Mud Dragon's also there for like random, awkward decks like Madolches or Subtears, where you can still hit them with Super Poly game 1, and it definitely can come in clutch in some of those. But obviously, like I said, if you don't want to play Super Poly in your version, definitely sub those in for maybe more rank 4s. Maybe play Utopia Prime, some other niche rank 4s that could come up, Cowboy for game, other Link monsters, whatever you want personally. But that's pretty much it for the list, guys. Let me know what you guys think for sure about this build specifically. I really thought the 50 card build was like, I think is totally dope because I love Harpies. I'm really excited to see that they can compete, and that's what gave me the inspiration to even make this video and build Harpies, because I kind of had the stuff, but I was just kind of like, just sitting there like, I don't know if it's really worth it. Like, I don't think they really do anything. Like, do I want to build like a tier 4 deck? But I think it might be tier 3 legitimately. It's like it's not bad at all. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think I'm missing something, if I should try something else. If you have tried it yourself and have anything specific that you think works really well, definitely let me know. I'm always open to suggestions, and let me know what you thought about my build. So I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Definitely more profiles coming in the future, especially when these newer sets start coming out. I definitely have a lot of decks I'm looking forward to that are going to be new. Hakai's, Tenyis, Marine Cess, Fire Fist, a bunch of stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'm going to get the hell out of here. Peace.